Welcome back to Introduction to iOS App Development at SSFS. In this lesson, we're going to look at the start method in our SpaceAdventure class and see if we can break it down into more functional pieces. So if we look at start, we can see that it really has three main jobs. One is to kind of get an introduction to the user. The second is to get the person's name. And the third is to determine which planet we should travel to. So we're going to actually create three methods that handles that one function. So let's go ahead and create a new method. And again, within our SpaceAdventure class, I'm going to start with the keyword private this time, and I'll explain that in a second. Function display introduction. And then my curly braces. And I will copy the first few lines of this, make sure I get the L, into this display introduction. And then at the top of my start method, the first thing I'll do is I will actually call that display introduction method. So when start is called, it will call this method, and this will be run. This private keyword talks about the access level of this method. Private means that it is only accessible by methods within this specific class file. Only methods within the SpaceAdventure class can call this. Other access levels are internal, which means that any class within the SpaceAdventure module can call that function. That's internal. Or if it's public, any other module that imports that class can call that method. Most of the time, we're going to deal with private or public. If information only needs to be seen by a class, make sure to keep it private. So now we have taken the code out of the start and put it into its own method. There are a couple of places that we use the getLin or getLine helper function within our code. We can create a method that will reduce the amount of repetitive code. So I'll make another private function response to prompt. And this time we're going to put some parameters in there. We're going to put the variable prompt, and it is of type string. And in this case, we do need to give the type of data that we're looking for. And then we're going to return some information too. The way you indicate information is to be returned is a dash and then the greater than sign. And it's going to return a string. So it's taking a string as a parameter and it's returning a string. Put my curly brace, and then I will print the prompt, and I will return whatever the user types in. Okay, so I've kind of encapsulated this function into this method here. Let's go ahead and use that new method up in our start. So instead of saying let name equals getLin directly, I'll say let name equals response to prompt. And for the prompt, I will cut that and paste it there and get rid of that print statement. And now I have let name equals response to prompt. This is the prompt, and it's going to return the information that the user types in. So in the way we created a display introduction method, let's go ahead and create one that greets our adventurer. So I'm going to create another method here, private function greet adventurer. It will take no parameters. And I will take this code Let's cut it and put it in our Greet Adventurer. And then after display introduction, I'll call the Greet Adventurer method. And again, this should work the exact same way. So now we have our start method is down to 2 method calls, and then this data. So we have one more method we're going to write, and it will be called private function, determine destination. And again, no parameters. And let's take all this code and place it here. And then the last line of my start method will be determine destination. So now our start method is just 3 simple method calls. Each method has one function: display at the introduction, greet the adventurer, and determine the destination. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull this print statement out of the determine destination and put it up here. In the same way I use the response to prompt method to get the user's name, I'm going to do the same thing when I'm determining a destination. I'm going to say the destination equals response to prompt, and I'm going to use this prompt here. And then I'll delete my print statement. Looks like I misspelled response, that's why I'm getting the error. So I'll put my O in, and now the errors go away. So let's very quickly run this to make sure it still works as we expect it. So Command R to run. Okay, so far so good. I'm going to hit Shift Command C for the console, put in my name. I'll put J, M, yes. And it works. So our functionality seems to work exactly as it did before. But notice that it's much easier to read exactly what's going on. We can see that in start, we're doing 3 things. Each 3 things are represented by a different method. So we've encapsulated a lot of data. So things are starting to look pretty good. But it seems that we have a couple of to-dos still left outstanding that we'll start to look at in the next lessons.